I've almost completed the book of Yirmiyahu, a great accomplishment. We're up to the 50th chapter. Hadavar Asher Diber Adonai El Bavel, El Eretz Kasdim Biad Yirmiyahu Hanavi. We've heard the prophecies that have been offered for Mitzrayim, for Ammon, for Moab, for Aza. Now we turn to the big dog, the Babylonians. And so this is what's going to be said to the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, as was told to Yirmiyahu. Hagidu v'goyim v'ashmiu su neis hashmiu al ticha chedu imru nil kada bavel hovish bel chat mirodach hovishu atzabeha chatu giluleha. So declare among the nations, proclaim, raise a banner, hide nothing, and say, Babylon is captured. Bel is shamed. Marduk is dismayed. Marduk, like Mordechai, the Babylonian god. Her idols are shamed. Her fetish is dismayed. Obviously, this isn't happening at the time that Yirmiyahu is being given this prophecy by God. It's something that's going to happen in the future. Ki Allah aleha goy mitzafon hu yashit et artsa lashamav lo yeyoshe ba me'adam v'ad beima nadu halachu. For a nation from the north has attacked her. It will make her land desolate. No one will dwell in it. Both human and animals shall wander away. Right? The whole book. It's been somebody's coming from the north. That cauldron that's coming in, that's destroying everything. It's coming from the north. Well, that cauldron was, in many ways, that devastating army was the Babylonians, or the Kasdim, and led by Nebuchadnezzar. But now there is somebody else from the north who's coming to get them as well. Everybody gets their comeuppance. And here we have, it's going back, it's like to the beginning of the hope, the true hopeful times of Yirmiyahu. In those times, God says, the people of Israel will together go with the people of Yehudah. So the two kingdoms, a kingdom that was lost already over 100 years ago, the Aseret Hashvatim, the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom, and the people of Judah who are still alive, who have been exiled, they will come together and they will cry as they go and they request and they seek the God of Israel. Tzion Yishalu Derech Hinei Heina Fnehem Bo'u V'nilvu El Adonai Brit Olam Lo Tishacheach. They will inquire of Zion, Sion Yerushalayim, right? In directions their faces will turn. They'll turn towards Jerusalem. And they'll come in themselves for the covenant that can never be forgotten. In the book of Yeshaya, in his messianic prayers, talks about this word nilvu. It talks about the nations coming in, streaming into Jerusalem. In the chapter with the, second chapter of Yeshaya, all the way back then, with the sword being beaten into plowshares and no nation knowing war anymore. Talks about that for all the nations. Here we only talk about it for Israel. Continuing verse 6, pasuk vav, son ovdot hayu ami roehem hitum harim shovevum mehar el giva halachu shachurivtza. My people were lost sheep. Their shepherds led them astray. They drove them out to the mountains. They roamed from mount to hill. They forgot their own resting place. We see here very often the problems with societies is their leadership. And Israel had bad leadership. When Moshe was going to die, he comes to God. Before he was going to die, but later in his life, he comes to God. He says, appoint a leader after me, so Bnei Israel won't be kitson asher ein lahem ro'eh, like sheep without a shepherd. We know the Midrashim. David was a shepherd. Avram was a shepherd. Moshe was a shepherd. So, right, but here, not only did they have no shepherd, but they had bad shepherds. They are ones who led them down the wrong path. All who countered Bnei Israel as they were lost and they were going the wrong path, devoured them. Their foes said, we won't be held guilty because they sinned against God, the true pasture, the hope of their ancestors, their God, right? It's their fault. We're serving as God's servants, which, of course, the way that Bavel was described over and over and again, where Nebuchadnezzar is called by Yirmiyah, Avdi, my servant. He's my hand. He's the one who is doing that which I desire. Now we go from Bnei Israel back to Bavel. Nudumi poch Bavel meretz kasdim sei'u ve'yu katudim lifnei tzon. Flee from Babylon. Leave the land of the Chaldeans and be like the he-goats, the male goats that lead the flock. Anochi me'iru ma'alel Bavel kahal goyim gdolim eretz hafon v'archula misham tilakei tzav ki gibor mashkil lo yashuv rekam. Because I am leading an assembly of great nations against Babylon that will come from the north. They will draw against her. They will capture. Their arrows are like those of skilled warriors who don't turn back without hitting their mark. It's going to be a devastation now, finally, of the Babylonians. Chaldea will be despoiled. It will be destroyed, says God. Ki tismechu, ki ta'alozu, shosei nachalati, ki tafusu ke'egla dasha, latithalu ka'abirim. Why is this happening? Because you rejoiced. You exalted, you were arrogant, you plundered my possession, you stamped them like a heifer treading grain, you neighed like steeds. And this is difficult because, of course, was the jobs that were given to the Babylonians. God said that they would be my Eved. God said that they were going to be destroyed. But maybe they did it with a little too much enthusiasm. Maybe it didn't have to be them. They decided it was them. All sorts of different interesting theological questions that are asked about verses like this, kind of similar way to why are the Egyptians punished, when God says to Abraham generations before that your descendants will be strangers and they will be afflicted, etc., etc. Bosha imchem ma'od chafra yoladetechem hinei acharit goyim midbar tzia va'arava. Your mother will be shamed. She who bore you will be disgraced. Behold, the end of all nations, wilderness, desert, and steppe. Miketzav Adonai lo teshev v'aytash mama kula. Kol over al Bavel yishom v'yisrok al kol makotav. Because of God's wrath, Bavel will be empty, will be uninhabited, it will be desolate. Whoever passes by will be appalled and will hiss at all of her wounds. All the things that we've said about all the other nations that Bavel did to them, certainly to Bnei Israel, the constant talk in this book about Jerusalem becoming uninhabitable, becoming desolate, becoming a mockery. Now it's coming back to Bavel. Irchu al Bavel saviv kol dorchei keshet yadu eleha al tachmilu el chetz ki l'Adonai chata'ah. So everybody gather around Bavel. Draw your bow, shoot at her. Don't spare arrows because she has sinned against God. Hariyo aleh saviv nayada naflu ashioteha nehersu chomoteha ki nikmat Adonai hi nakmuva kasher asta asula. So raise and shout about it. She has surrendered. Her fortresses, her bastions, everything has fallen down. This is God's vengeance that God has done to her. Kirtu zorem mi Bavel v'toves megal ba'al katzir mibnei cherev hayona ish el amo yifnu v'ish la'artzo yanusu. Make an end of Bavel. It's going to be destroyed because of the deadly sword. Everyone will turn back to their people and will flee to their own land. So this is destruction of Bavel, which allows everybody to go home because Bavel was the one that destroyed everybody else. Sep Pizura Yisrael Arayoti Dichu Rishon Achlu Melech Ashur V'zeh Acharon Itzmu Nevuchad Retzar Melech Bavel. Israel are a scattered sheep. They are harried by the lions, or pushed out by the lions. The first was, he's not mentioned here by name, but Sancheirav, the king of Assyria, who devoured the northern kingdom and scattered them anywhere. In the end, it was King Nebuchad, Retzar of Bavel, who crushed their bones and also sent them to different places. And this is a very good description of our people. Sep Pizura, it's a scattered sheep that's all over. To remember that we're all part of the same flock of sheep. Lachem, we're in verse 18. Just like ultimately Assyria was destroyed, so too will Bavel and its king. Vishovavti et Yisrael el neveu v'ra hakarmel v'abashanu v'har Ephraim v'Gilad tisba nafsho. And Israel will be led back to its pastures, will graze in the Carmel and Bashan and eat, will be satiated in the hill country of Ephraim and Gilad. It's not just Yehuda, it's Israel, it's the northern kingdom that's being told this. Bayamim ahemu v'aytahinu ma'adonai yivukash davon Yisrael ve'inenu v'chatat Yehuda v'lo timsa'ena yeslach la'asher ashir. And a verse that is mentioned, I believe, on the Yom Kippur davening, right? In those days, God says the iniquity, the sins of Israel will be sought. People will look for them, but there will be none. There will be no sins of Yehuda. Nothing will be found because God will pardon those who I allow to survive. So there have been Bnei Israel didn't listen to God, all of the messengers, all of the prophets, so everything that was sent to them, they didn't listen over and over again, but now they've been punished. And when they come back, their sins have been forgotten. They get a new start. They get a new chance. Al aretz miratayim alei aleha vel yoshvei pekod charov v'acharei macharei mum Adonai v'asei kol asher tziviticha. Advance against her, the land of Meratayim, and against Pekod, ruin and destroy after them. Says God, do as I have commanded you. Kol milchama ba'aretz v'shever gadol. There's the sound of war. There's great destruction. Eight nigda Vayishaver patish kol haaretz, how the hammer has smashed the whole earth. Right, everything is being smashed and hacked and shattered. Bavel bagoyim. How has Babylon become an appallment amongst the nations? Yakoshti lach v'gam nilkadet Bavel v'at lo yadat nimseit v'gam nitpast ki v'Adonai hit garit. I set a trap for you, Bavel, and you got trapped. You were caught because you challenged God. So we don't see where exactly Bavel challenges God, but it's interesting to think about it. Bavel, remember the first time we have Bavel in the Tanakh? Migdal Bavel, last week's Parshat Noach. And what do the people do? They say, let's make a tower all the way to the heavens. Let's make a name for ourselves, right? And it's understood by many as being a challenge to God. So here too, they're being accused of challenging God. It's not something that that I saw as to how they were challenging God, but with constantly in these verses, they being the messenger of God, doing what God wants. But interesting to think about that in the punishment, going all the way back to where we first met Bavel, and then they were gone for a long time. Bavel is not a neighbor of Bnei Yisrael. It's not like Edom and Ammon and Moab or the Canaanites or the Plishtim or Mitzrayim. There are people who are far away. And so it goes back, in a sense, their original sin is the one that they still do all of these generations later. In verse 25, Patach Adonai et Otzro v'yotzei et kli za'amo ki melacha hi l'Adonai Elohim tzvaot ba'eretz kasdim. God has opened the divine armory, and the wrath is coming, the weapons of wrath. This is going to happen in the land of the Kastim. Bola, Miketz Petru, Ma'avuseha, Saluha, Kamo Aremim, Vehacharimuha, Al Tihi La She'erit. So everybody gather and go against her. Break open her granaries, pile her up like heaps of grain, destroy her. Let not even a remnant, was talked about the She'erit Yisrael, the Pleitat Yisrael, the little remnant of Israel that survived. We don't want a remnant at all for Bavel. Chirbu kol pareha, yardu la tavach, hoy alehem kiva yomam eit pekudatam. Destroy all of her bulls, let them all go to slaughter, because their day has come, their hour of doom. Kol nasim ufleitim eretz Bavel, agid b'tzion nikmat Adonai Eloheinu nikmat heichalo. We're in 28. Listen to the voice, right? The voice of the fugitives escaping, running away from the land of Bavel. Tell Tzion of the vengeance of God, the vengeance of the holy temple, right? It's time to come back. Hashmiu el Bavel, Rabim kol dorchei kesher, chanu ala asaviv, al yihila pleita shalmula fa'ala, kichol asher asta asula, ki el Adonai zarda, el kadosh Yisrael. So again, get the archers, get them ready to shoot their arrows into Bavel and camp around her. Let none of her people escape. This is it's karma. This is coming back to them. Do to her what she has done to everybody else, because she has acted against God, rebelled against God, the Holy One of Israel. So therefore, her young men will certainly fall in the squares, her warriors will perish in the day. That's what God says. I'm going to deal with your arrogance and your haughtiness. God says to the Babylonians, doom is coming. V'chashal zadon v'nafal v'ein lo mekim v'hitzati eish ba'ara v'achla kol sevivatav. Right, you're going to fall. Your arrogance is going to cause you to fall, to stumble, and there's going to be no one there to raise you up. Your cities will be set on fire. It will consume everything around her. Kol amar Adonai tzvaot. Ashukim b'nei Yisrael v'nei Yehuda yachdav v'chol shoveim hachaziku v'am ma'anu me'anu shalcham. God says the people of Israel are oppressed, and so too are the people of Yehuda. They were held captives, and the captors refused to let them go. Take a moment just to think. Unfortunately, the relevance of this verse right here today, and we hope that verse will be responded to with this type of verse for us today. Go alam, chazak Adonai tzvot shemo riv yarivet rivam, leman hirgia ta'aretz v'hirgiz liyoshvei Bavel. The mighty Redeemer, whose name is God, will champion their cause and give rest to these, so as to give rest to the earth and unrest to the inhabitants of Babylon. Cherev al kastimnu Adonai v'yoshvei Bavel. The sword is pointed right towards the Kasdim, towards the inhabitants of Babylon, towards its officials. Cherev el habadim, a sword against the sort of the astronomers or the diviners. V'no alu cherev el giboreha v'chatu, the sword against their warriors. It's going to cut them down. Cherev el susav el richbo el kol ha'erev asher b'tocho v'hayu l'nashim. Cherev el utzroteha uvuzazu, a sword against its horses, its chariots, against all the assembled people in its midst, against the women, a sword against its treasuries, a sword against those who have pillaged. Chorev el meimeha. Here we've gone from cherev to chorev, to sort of destruction. V'ya veshu. So right, a drought is going to happen. Their waters are going to dry up. Ki eretz pisilimhi uva emim yitholelu, because it is a land of idols with dreaded, terrible images of idolatry. Lachein yishvu tziyim et iyim v'yashvu v'avnot ya'ana v'lo teshevod lanetzach v'lo tishkon ad dor vador. Right, so cats and hyenas will dwell there, and ostriches. It will never be settled again, not by its inhabitants through the generations. Kamapechat Elohim et Sdom v'et Amorah v'et Shechineh Hanum Adonai lo yoshev sham ish v'lo yagur ba ben Adam. It will be like the destruction of Sodom and Amorah and its neighbors. God says no one will live there. No human will be able to live there anymore. The animals can, but people can't. A great nation is coming from the north, and it's going to rouse many kings from all over. They have their bow, they have their javelin, and this is a people who are cruel, merciless, and they are like the roaring sea, like horses coming into battle against you, Babylon. Shema melech Bavel Shim'am v'rafu yadav. The king of Babylon heard about them. His hands are suddenly weak. Tzara hechazikatnitu chil kioleda. Anguish seizes him like the pains of a woman giving birth. Hine karyeh yalem migaon hayarden el nevei tanki argia aritzei me'aleo mi v'achur eloheha efkod ki mi chamoni umi yodi'eni umi zero asher yamod lefanai. It will be just like when the lion pounces from the jungles of the Jordan into what seems to be a secure, safe pasture. In a moment, they'll be taken out. God says, nobody is like me who can do me. No shepherd, nobody's going to be able to stand up to me. I don't care what sort of defenses you have there in Bavel. So listen to the plan that God has devised against you, Babylon, against the land of the Chaldeans, the shepherd boys, right? They'll be dragged away. Their pasture will be destroyed. It will be a place of desolation. Mikol nitpisa Bavel nir asha haaretz uza'aka bagoyim nishma. And that the sound of Babylon's capture, of its destruction, the earthquake, an outcry is heard amongst the nations. What is this outcry that's heard? It can be understood a different way. Maybe it's an outcry of happiness at the destruction of their enemy. Maybe it's an outcry of worry, of fear, because now the Babylonians have been destroyed. Who's going to come next? Are the people that come next going to be even worse than these people are? Right, the unknown is always very frightening and very scary, and so the people don't know who is going to come next. So here, Bavel, who has been the instrument of God's anger over and over again, now they are the ones who are going to receive that destruction. They're the ones who are going to be destroyed and flattened. And we'll continue with that. We have a similar idea of Bavel being destroyed in the next chapter, in the penultimate chapter of this book. It's a long chapter, 64 verses, the next one. And one thing just to point out about that, which we've said a couple times in relation to this, when we talked about Mitzrayim, we talked about Edom and Ammon and Moab. I believe all of them, maybe not Edom, but they were going to be destroyed, but they would be returning. That's what we were told. Just like Bnei Israel, these other nations will be returning. Bavel doesn't say they're going to be returned. It doesn't say after that they will return to their country. Bavel, for whatever reason, is not allowed to return. And again, it may go back to the beginning, to Migdal Bavel, to all that other, if you think of Bavel and the arrogance and wanting to have the strength all in one place and being challenging God and standing up. So if they're the controlling of the majority of the ancient civilization, again, not China or whatever, and not talking about Native Americans, but in that region where Bavel is not only control, it's a little distance, it's coming out of its Asia Minor, wherever, being controlling all of the Middle East. That's a problematic situation. That's not what God wants. And so those people, the same way they were sent off into different directions and not really able to remain as a people, God says that to them as well. At least to me, it is the fear of having too much power in one place. And that's what, to me, at least from the beginning of the Tanakh, from the beginning of Bereshit till now, Bavel represents, and therefore they will have their comeuppance.